My name is Amanda, and I'm 29 years old. This is my story. I remember the day I got promoted 2 years ago like it was yesterday. My boss called me into his office, and I thought I was in trouble. Instead, he handed me a contract with a significantly higher salary. From that day forward, I lived like a monk. No fancy clothes, no expensive dinners out, nothing. Every single cent went straight into my savings account. But I'll be honest, it wasn't just my savings that made this possible. A year ago, my grandmother passed away. She was my mother's mother, and she left me $150,000 in her will. That money, combined with everything I'd saved, meant I could finally stop dreaming and start house hunting. When I found this 2-bedroom apartment, I knew it was the one. Not too big, not too small, just perfect. The best part? No mortgage. The realtor actually did a double take when I said I wanted to pay in full. The look on her face when I signed those papers? Priceless. I couldn't help myself. As soon as I got the keys, I took about 1 million photos and posted them on social media. My friends went crazy with the likes and comments. Congratulations, Amanda. Living the dream. When's the housewarming parties? It felt amazing to have so many people genuinely happy for me. Then my phone rang. The name on the screen made my stomach drop. Dad. Amanda, he said, his voice as dry as sandpaper. I need you to come over for lunch next Saturday. That call brought back everything I'd been trying to forget. See, my mom died when I was 9, cancer. It ripped our family apart. But Dad? Well, he didn't stay single for long. Within a year, he married Amelia, and a year after that, they had my half-sister. Amelia never liked me much, even before she had her own kid. But after that, things got really bad. Suddenly, there were all these new rules, and funny enough, they only seemed to apply to me. Amanda, you need to be quieter. Amanda, you can't have friends over. Amanda, turn that music down right now. Meanwhile, my half-sister got everything. New clothes? She got them first. The latest toys? They were hers before she could even ask. Family trips? They planned them around her schedule. It was like I'd become a ghost in my own home, floating around while Dad and Amelia doted on their precious daughter. Sometimes I wondered if they even remembered I existed. Thank God for Grandma Linda. I don't think I would have survived those years without her. As things got worse at home, I started spending more and more time at her house. She lived just 15 minutes away by bike, and her door was always open for me. Her house became my safe haven. My cousins Thomas, Hannah, and little Tommy were often there too. They were my Aunt Jane's kids, and unlike my half-sister, they actually treated me like family. We'd spend hours playing board games, watching movies, or just hanging out in Grandma's backyard. Meanwhile, back at my father's house, things were getting worse. My sister Susan had turned into a nightmare. She'd hide my things, accidentally spill drinks on my homework, and even start spreading rumors about me at school. But somehow, I was always the one who got blamed. Amanda, why are you making your sister upset? Amelia would demand. Amanda, stop antagonizing Susan, Dad would echo, not even bothering to hear my side. The day I got my college acceptance letter was probably the happiest day of my life. Not because of the school itself, though getting a partial scholarship was amazing, but because it meant I could finally leave. The college was 3 states away, and Grandma helped me pay what the scholarship didn't cover. College was like breathing fresh air after being underwater for years. I threw myself into my studies, called Grandma at least twice a week, and tried to forget about my father's family. Dad rarely called anyway. He was too busy with his real daughter. When he did call, our conversations were short and superficial. After graduation, I had to come back to my home state. I had a job offer from Thompson & Mills, and it was too good to pass up. I assumed I'd stay with Dad and Amelia until I found my own place, but Amelia quickly shut that down. Oh, we gave your room to Susan, she said with fake sympathy when I called. She needs the extra space for her things. You understand, don't you? Dad didn't say a word to defend me. Not one word. Thankfully, Grandma welcomed me with open arms. I stayed with her while I started my new job, and after a few months, I had enough saved up to rent my own little apartment. It wasn't much, but it was mine. Then, a year ago, Grandma passed away. It was sudden, a stroke in her sleep. She left her house to my cousins, which made sense since they lived closer and had always helped maintain it. To me, she left $150,000, money she'd been saving her whole life. She wrote in her will, "For the granddaughter who reminds me so much of her mother." This past year has been quiet. Dad and his perfect family haven't bothered much with me. They didn't even invite me for Christmas, not that I was surprised. I spent it with Aunt Jane and my cousins instead, and honestly, it was the best Christmas I'd had in years. That Saturday, I drove to my father's house with a knot in my stomach. The closer I got to their neighborhood, the tighter it became. I checked my watch, 11:57. Still early, but I'd rather be early than give Amelia another reason to complain about me. I rang the doorbell, counting the seconds until someone answered. Dad opened the door, his face unreadable. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. "No hello. No how are you? Just come in." They were all waiting in the living room. Amelia was perched on her favorite armchair like a queen on her throne, and Susan sprawled across the couch, tapping away at her phone. Amelia barely acknowledged my presence with a curt nod. Susan didn't even look up. "Sit down," Dad said, gesturing to the lonely chair across from them. I felt like I was being set up for an interrogation. The silence was thick enough to cut with a knife. Dad cleared his throat, once, twice, before finally speaking. "Susan has graduated high school," he announced, as if this was breaking news. "She's enrolled in the local college." I nodded, not sure where this was going. Was I supposed to congratulate her? Send her a graduation gift? I hadn't even been invited to the ceremony. "That's nice," I said carefully when it became clear they were waiting for some response. "She needs somewhere to live," Dad continued, his eyes fixed on a point somewhere above my head. "Somewhere close to campus." Another pause. Amelia was nodding along like one of those dashboard bobbleheads. "And, well," Dad shifted in his seat, "your apartment would be perfect." I nodded, not sure where this was going. Was I supposed to congratulate her? Send her a graduation gift? I hadn't even been invited to the ceremony. "That's nice," I said carefully when it became clear they were waiting for some response. "She needs somewhere to live," Dad continued, his eyes fixed on a point somewhere above my head. "Somewhere close to campus." Another pause. Amelia was nodding along like one of those dashboard bobbleheads. "And, well," Dad shifted in his seat, "your apartment would be perfect. It's in an ideal location, close to the college." "I'm not looking for a roommate," I said slowly, still trying to process what was happening. Dad shook his head, finally meeting my eyes. "You misunderstand, Amanda. We're not asking you to let Susan live with you. We're asking you to give her your apartment." I actually laughed, a short, sharp sound that died as soon as I saw their faces. They were serious. They were actually serious. "Give her my apartment?" I repeated, certain I must have heard wrong. "As in give up my home? The one I just bought? The one I worked years to afford?" "Yes," Dad said firmly, like he was explaining something very simple to a very stupid child. "Susan needs it more than you do." I sat there, staring at them, wondering if I'd somehow slipped into an alternate reality. My apartment. The one I'd saved every penny for. The one I bought with my inheritance from Grandma. They wanted me to just give it away? The same Susan who is still refusing to even look at me? "She deserves it more than you do," Amelia said, her voice dripping with that same condescension she'd used on me since I was 9 years old. "After all, what have you done to deserve such a nice place? Living all alone in a 2-bedroom apartment while my poor Susan has to consider student housing." I shot to my feet, so fast my chair almost tipped over. "Are you all completely insane?" My voice came out stronger than I expected. "I'm not giving up my apartment. Not now, not ever. I bought that place with my own money." Dad's face darkened. "Your own money? Your grandmother gave you $150,000. That's hardly your own money." Something snapped inside me. All those years of staying quiet, of taking their abuse, of trying to be the bigger person, gone in an instant. "My grandmother's?" I laughed, but there wasn't any humor in it. "You mean my mother's mother?" The woman who actually cared about me when you were too busy playing happy family with your new wife and daughter? That grandmother? The one who has absolutely no relation to Susan whatsoever. Susan chose that moment to finally look up from her phone, her face scrunching up in that familiar way that always preceded her crocodile tears. "You're such a terrible sister," she wailed, right on cue. "You've always been so mean to me. You've never loved me." "Amanda," Dad said, his voice hard. "I'm very disappointed in you. This is not how we raised you. You didn't raise me at all." The words exploded out of me. "You checked out the moment Mom died, and Amelia moved in. Don't you dare talk about how you raised me." I grabbed my purse and headed for the door, my whole body shaking. Behind me, I could hear Susan's theatrical sobs, Amelia's comforting murmurs, and Dad calling my name, but I didn't stop. I couldn't get out of there fast enough. I thought that would be the end of it. I really did. But the next morning, my phone rang. Dad again. "Amanda, listen to me." He started before I could even say hello. "You're the older sister. You need to help Susan. This is what family does." I almost laughed. Family? Now you want to talk about family? Where was this family spirit when Amelia kicked me out of my room? When Susan was making my life hell? When you didn't even invite me to Christmas? "That's different," he insisted. "You're being unreasonable, Amanda. Susan needs." "You're crazy." I cut him off. "Actually crazy if you think I'm going to give my apartment to someone who spent her entire life trying to hurt me. Don't call me again about this." I hung up, but it wasn't over. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with messages from Amelia. "You've always been jealous of Susan. You're just like your mother, selfish and ungrateful. After everything we've done for you." I stared at the messages, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over me. Dad kept calling throughout the day, but I stopped answering. What was the point? The conversation would just go in circles. Him demanding I give up my home, me refusing, him guilt-tripping me about family obligations. A week after the confrontation, I decided to go ahead with my housewarming party. My apartment was filled with the people who actually mattered, friends from work, old college buddies, and my cousins. The sound of genuine laughter and conversation felt like a cleansing ritual, washing away the toxicity of the previous weekend. "Amanda," Hannah called from the kitchen. "We're running low on ice." I was heading to the freezer when my cousin Thomas grabbed my arm. His face was serious, unusual for him, as he's typically the family clown. "Hey, I need to show you something," he said quietly, guiding me toward the hallway. "You might want to sit down for this." I perched on the edge of my new ottoman as Thomas pulled out his phone. He hesitated for a moment, then handed it to me. "I was at Lorenzo's last night with some friends," he explained. "Look who I saw in the back booth." The first photo made my heart stop. There was Amelia, my stepmother, sitting in a dimly lit restaurant booth. But she wasn't alone. A man I'd never seen before had his arm around her, and they were kissing, not a friendly peck, but the kind of kiss that leaves no doubt about the nature of a relationship. More photos followed. Amelia laughing, her hand on the man's chest. The man feeding her a bite of dessert. Their fingers intertwined on the table. They looked comfortable together, intimate, like lovers who'd done this 1,000 times before. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Thomas continued, "I know I shouldn't have taken pictures, but—" "Send them to me," I interrupted, my voice barely a whisper. "Please." After the party ended and my last guest left, I sat in my dark living room, staring at the photos Thomas had sent. Who was this man? I needed to know. It didn't take long to find him. Amelia wasn't exactly subtle. He was right there in her Facebook friends list, Michael Mitchell. I clicked on his profile and felt my world tilt on its axis. Michael Mitchell had been working at Riverside Insurance Company for 20 years, the same company where Amelia worked, the same company she'd been at since before she married my father. I scrolled through his photos, going back years. There were company picnics, office parties, holiday celebrations, and in so many of them, there she was. Sometimes just in the background, sometimes partially out of frame, but I recognized her. 20 years of photos showing a relationship that clearly went far beyond professional courtesy. One photo from 15 years ago caught my attention. A woman in a red dress, her face turned away from the camera, was sitting on a park bench with Michael. The caption read, "Perfect Sunday afternoon." The woman's hair, her posture, her favorite red dress that she still had in her closet. It was Amelia. 3 years into her marriage to my father. I opened another tab and searched for more recent photos of Michael Mitchell. As his face filled my screen, something else hit me like a physical blow. Those eyes. That nose. The way his mouth curved up slightly at the corners, even when he wasn't really smiling. I pulled up a recent photo of Susan on my phone and held it next to the screen. The resemblance was undeniable. How had I never seen it before? Susan looked nothing like my father, she never had. But she was practically a carbon copy of Michael Mitchell. The truth was burning a hole in my pocket. For 2 days, I walked around in a daze, carrying the weight of what I discovered. Every time I looked at the photos, I felt sick to my stomach. 20 years of deception, and my father had been completely blind to it all. When his number flashed on my phone screen again, I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Amanda. His voice was stern, authoritative, the voice he used when he thought he was being a father. "We need to have a serious conversation. Come to the house now." I considered telling him everything right then, blurting out the truth about his wife's 2-decade affair, about Susan's real father. But some instinct told me to wait. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, I said instead. They were waiting in the living room, just Dad and Amelia this time. "Sit down, Amanda," Dad commanded, and I complied, playing the dutiful daughter one last time. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Your behavior has been disappointing," he began, pacing in front of the fireplace. "This selfishness, this refusal to help your sister. It stops now." I watched Amelia nodding along, and my stomach turned. The audacity of this woman, demanding I give up my apartment to her illegitimate daughter. "I've made a decision," Dad continued, his voice hard. "Either you sign over your apartment to Susan, or I'm writing you out of my will completely. No inheritance. No family money. Nothing." Amelia's face lit up with triumph. They really thought they had me cornered. I forced my expression into one of shock and distress. "I need to think about this," I whispered, watching Amelia's smile grow wider. "Good girl," Dad said, his voice softening slightly. "You take some time to think about what really matters." Could I use the bathroom first?" I asked, making my voice small and shaky. Dad waved his hand dismissively, and I hurried upstairs. But instead of going to the bathroom, I slipped into Susan's room, my old room. Everything was pink and perfect, just like Susan's entire life had been. Her hairbrush sat on the vanity, full of long, dark strands that matched Michael Mitchell's exactly. My hands shaking slightly, I pulled a small plastic bag from my pocket and carefully collected several strands. Next, I crept into Dad's bedroom. His comb was right where it always was, on his dresser next to his wedding photo. The irony wasn't lost on me as I collected his hair into a second bag. That night, I researched DNA testing facilities, the kind that did paternity tests, the kind that would hold up in court if needed. It wasn't cheap. Nearly $2,000 for rush processing, but it would be worth every penny. The next morning, I walked into the facility with my 2 carefully labeled bags. The technician explained the process, had me fill out forms, and assured me I'd have results in a few weeks. The DNA test results arrived in a plain white envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it, though I already knew what it would say. The clinical language was unmistakable. The alleged father is excluded as the biological father of the tested child. The probability of paternity is 0%. Right on cue, my phone rang. Amelia's name flashed on the screen. "We're tired of waiting," she snapped, not bothering with a hello. "Your father and I need your decision about the apartment within the next few days. Otherwise, you can kiss your inheritance goodbye." I kept my voice steady, calm. "Actually, I've been thinking about everything. I'll come over for dinner this Saturday. We can discuss it then." Saturday evening, I drove to their house again, the DNA test results tucked safely in my purse. This time, the knot in my stomach wasn't from anxiety, it was anticipation. They were all waiting in the living room, looking like cats who'd cornered a mouse. Amelia was practically glowing with triumph. Susan sprawled on the couch, examining her manicure with a smirk. Dad stood by the fireplace, trying to look stern but barely containing his satisfaction. Finally, Susan drawled. Took you long enough to make the right decision. Dad stepped forward, placing a hand on my shoulder. I'm glad you've changed your mind, Amanda. This is what family is all about, helping each other, Dad said. I shrugged off his hand. I haven't changed my mind. I'm not giving up my apartment. Not now, not ever. You selfish brat. Dad's face turned red. That's it. You're out of the will. Everything goes to Susan, my real daughter, the one who actually understands family loyalty. I couldn't help it, I laughed. The sound echoed through the room, making them all stare at me like I'd lost my mind. Your real daughters? I reached into my purse. That's interesting, Dad, because I have something you need to see. I pulled out the envelope and held it out to him. He snatched it, glaring at me as he yanked the papers out. Read it, I said softly. Read it out loud. He began reading, his voice confident at first. DNA relationship testing report. Then his face started to change. The color drained from his cheeks as he reached the crucial line. The paper shook in his hands. Amelia made a sound like she'd been punched in the gut. This is a lie, she screamed, her face contorted with panic. She forged these documents. She's trying to turn you against me, against us. I have more proof, I said quietly, pulling out my phone. While Amelia continued to scream about forgery, my fingers shook slightly as I pulled up the photos Thomas had taken. Look. The room fell silent as I held up the screen. There was Amelia, locked in an intimate embrace with Michael Mitchell. The timestamp showed it was from just last week. Amelia crumpled onto the couch, her mask of superiority finally cracking. David, please. I can explain. Explain, he roared, making us all jump. Explain what? How long? 20 years, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. He's my colleague at Riverside Insurance. Susan, Michael is her father. The silence that followed was deafening. I watched my father's world collapse in real time, 20 years of lies crashing down around him. Without another word, I picked up my purse and walked out, leaving them to their reckoning. The next week passed in a blur. I went to work, came home, and tried to process everything that had happened. I heard through the grapevine that Amelia and Susan had moved out, that Dad had hired the city's best divorce lawyer, and that the scandal had spread through their social circle like wildfire. When Dad's number appeared on my phone a week later, I almost didn't answer. But something in me, maybe curiosity, maybe hope, made me pick up. Can we meet? His voice sounded rough, tired. Coffee at Carson's Cafe, I replied. I found him at a corner table, staring into a cold cup of coffee. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week, unshaven, shoulders slumped, wedding ring conspicuously absent. I filed for divorce, he said without preamble. Amelia and Susan are gone. I told them to get out of my house. I've stopped Susan's college payments too. Why should I pay for another man's child? I sat silently, stirring my latte, waiting. Amanda. His voice cracked. I've been a terrible father to you. Yes, I agreed calmly. You have. All these years, I favored Susan over you. I let Amelia treat you like an outsider in your own home. I didn't protect you. I didn't support you. I failed you in every way possible. You did, I said. And you never would have realized it if you hadn't found out about Susan. If she had been your biological daughter, you would have kept treating me like a second-class citizen. You would have taken my apartment from me and given it to her without a second thought. He flinched at my words, but didn't deny them. Please, he whispered, reaching across the table. I pulled my hand back before he could touch it. Please give me a chance to make it right. Let me try to be the father you deserved all along. That was 3 months ago. We meet sometimes now. Coffee, lunch, careful conversations about safe topics. He tries to make up for lost time, telling me stories about Mom that he'd never shared before, asking about my work, my friends, my life. But full forgiveness? I'm not there yet. Maybe I never will be. 20 years of rejection and neglect left scars that won't heal overnight. if they ever heal at all. As for Amelia and Susan, I hear things occasionally through the gossip mill. They moved in with Michael Mitchell, I think, and started living the life they'd been secretly planning all along. But honestly, I don't really care. They're part of a chapter in my life that's closed now.